The final round of the GT4 European Series is set to get underway here at the Circuit de Catalunya. We are at Barcelona and we are looking for our final one-hour race of the season, which is going to give us champions in AM, in Pro-Am and in Silver at the end of what has been an all-action season. And from the race officials' point of view, yesterday's race was perhaps not quite as exciting as we thought, because although an awful lot happened, they were here until 11:30 last night, wading through evidence and making decisions, and back again early this morning to carry on. And therefore, even in the last half an hour or so, penalties have been awarded which are mainly grid drops rather than affecting yesterday's race result. But there's quite a bit to catch up on, and we'll do that in a moment. Ben Constanduras and David Addison are trackside. Gemma Scott will be down on the grid, and that grid is starting to form because the pit lane has now opened and cars making their way round onto the circuit in readiness for 60 minutes of racing. As ever, there's the mandatory pit stop as well to factor into all of this, and the pit stop needing to be done 2 at a time. So the cars will make their run to the grid, and then to get us ready for 60 minutes of this final round, the pole position car is going to be the Porsche of Alexander Hartley, and alongside the silver category leading in the championship, Mercedes. Enzo Juliet will start. That's a car though that had dramas yesterday, just drama really being a lack of pace, and so the car never sparkled in the way that they were anticipating. So as the pit lane slowly but surely empties, there's then the countdown of 10 minutes or so on the grid, another formation lap, and then we will be in business. And 47 cars, some of which didn't take the start yesterday because they had problems on the outlap, but it's going to be hopefully a trouble-free race today. Lucky Banyeth is on the grid, looking forward, he thinks, for a championship win. He's with Gemma.
Look at the smiles there already. Looking forward to this race?
Yeah, looking forward to win the championship. Let's see what we can do. I think we have a really good position to start, to finish in good position, and I have all my effort to Enzo. He will do it super good, and let's see what we can do.
Absolutely, we're just being careful as the cars are arriving, but obviously, putting it right down to the final race of the year again.
Yeah, all the season we started with a little bit mistakes, but now we are on the top, batting with Santelog. Yesterday was a hard race. We have a little mistakes on race 1, but we are on P2, 1 point, all is possible.
It really is. Have a great race. Thank you.
Thank you. See you.
And that car was one of 12 cars to pick up penalties yesterday. An unsafe release during their pit stop gave them a 5-second penalty for the result of yesterday, which does mean that they dropped 1 extra place down in the Silver Cup standings of yesterday's race. They didn't have a particularly good one anyway, and they were 3 points ahead of their nearest rivals, Owen Bestard and Rui Meerhouse. That's now changed, and I think it's now only 2 points because of the result that literally has only just been released from all of the decisions that we saw from yesterday's action. And so many of the decisions relate to the grid for this race as well.
Now, yesterday, the Mercedes, you just heard from Lucky Banyeth, he just did not seem to get hooked up at all. He's a local driver, as in he's based about 10 minutes, if that, away from the circuit. The team based a stone's throw away from the circuit here as well, and therefore you would sort of expect home advantage, but it just did not come. However, in qualifying yesterday, it was a good effort by Enzo Juliet to be second, and in contrast, the Santelot Ran Audi that is going to be started in this race by Owen Bestard, that seemed to struggle. It looked quick enough, but I think traffic was really the problem there, and it never quite got that clear lap in. Traffic is always an issue around here, especially when you've got such a big grid, but it is advantage Mercedes going into this race, isn't it?
Between those two, yes, only slightly in terms of points, but certainly in terms of positions. We do see, though, is depending on how many full course yellows and safety cars we have, the first element of this race doesn't seem to affect too much the latter half, because it's always some kind of safety car that breaks it up and bunches the pack back together. And of course, the two-driver element to it, you would perhaps see the second drivers make up better ground on the first. Like we saw yesterday, the 15 car didn't really move in the first stint of yesterday's race. It was only the second stint when Julie got inside that it actually started moving up through the field.
Now, Pro-Am is up for grabs as well. Greg Gilvaire in the mix to win that, but he's also copped a grid drop. Let's hear from him with Gemma.
Gregor, I think it was a busy one for the stewards yesterday. There seems to be a lot of points decisions made and shuffling around of order after qualifying and after yesterday's race, but you've suffered a grid penalty. Why?
Yeah, it's because I overshoot my break points on my start yesterday, so I miss the chicane, and the rule is if you cut, you have 1 point. No? So everybody who cut the chicane had a one point on his license, and we took a five place penalty for today.
Frustrating, I imagine, but of course you're still within fighting distance.
Yeah, we need to win today, and the car 87 need to finish maximum P9. So yeah, it's a game. We need to win. That's it.
Keep focused. Thank you very much.
He missed the chicane, not the chicken.
Yes. Yes.
I was a bit confused. There are the point standings after the last race. Jean-Luc Boblic and Jim Pla have gone out on circuit this morning to test their car after big damage yesterday.
And Jean-Luc Boblic is going to start. Now, with respect to him, he's not as quick as Fabien Marchal, who will start this car. So Pro-Am, again, is going to be decided, I think, towards the second stint. He's going to get the guns for hire in. That is Kevin Jimenez, graduate of Clio Cup Europe in the GPA Racing ran Aston Martin, David Pouget's team.
And they inherited the win in the AM yesterday because Christophe Amon and Blanchemin got themselves, they did get themselves a penalty for a short pit stop, as we expected to happen, but they also got a penalty for this race, a 5-place grid drop, for a very similar reason to Michel. Lots of drivers accrued 3 behavioural warning points and therefore get a grid drop. And at the end of the season, after a full year of behavioural warning points stacking up, seems to be what we are seeing in the last race, potentially why the stewards were so busy last night.
Laurent Hergon is going to start the Alpine here, number 55, that he shares with Jean-Baptiste Mela. Laurent Hergon, who was pretty rapid in yesterday's race. It's a Porsche on pole, though. Alexander Hartwig, who we heard from before yesterday's race. But the car was unlucky yesterday. It got turned around early on. There is the car that is leading the AM Championship, the Porsche of the WNS Motorsport team, Mikhail Laboda, Andrei Solokotsev. Let's go and join Gemma, this time with Benjamin Lariche.
Benjamin, this is such a close championship and really leaving it to the final moments for the final championship to be decided. You guys are battling it out for the top 5?
Yes, top 5. We're on 10 points to top 5. So yeah, we just focus to finish with the best results it's possible. We are fast. We have a good tire degradation. It's a key of this track, particularly here. So we just focus on don't do mistake and to be regular, and we'll see after.
Absolutely. Well, yesterday we saw a lot of action on track. There was a lot of Porsche yellow safety cars as well. We're hoping to keep it a bit cleaner today, I imagine.
Yeah, I hope so. Yesterday I had a problem. I had a good pace. I had a problem with my engine. So I go back to P40 to P12. So yes, I hope we don't have any problem, and we'll see what's happened.
On croise les doigts.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Benjamin Lariche, who will share with Robert Consani. That's one of the Silver Cup Audis, and the grid is good to go. This is how the AM Championship looks. So it is Mikhail Laboda and Andrei Solokotsev, who are 157 points to the 142 of Mauro Ricci. Now, they're in the box seats, aren't they? And Ricci also has dropped further back after yesterday's amended result.
As has the 37 car. So the 37 car made contact, if you remember, with the 88 and got 5-place grid penalty for that contact and a behavioural warning point. That meant that Solokotsev got too many behavioural warning points and therefore got another penalty. So they're 10 places back from where they should start and a little bit of an uphill climb for the 37. But crucially, it didn't affect their result yesterday. It affects the grid for today, and therefore they keep those points that we've just seen on the screen.
So we've got the AM battle, which is very much advantage Laboda and Solokotsev. There is Pro-Am, which is the Jean-Luc Boblic Jim Plum Mercedes 20 points / 21 points ahead of Fabien Michel, Greg Gilbert. I offer you the difference because you get a point for pole position, which went the way of Audi number 42. but then it got a grid drop. So what we're trying to get to the bottom of is whether you keep the point for setting the fastest time, or that point goes to the car that actually starts the race from the class pole position, because now there's a difference. Silver, 3 points between the Enzo Juliet Luc Ibanez Mercedes and the Rui Mirhaas Owen Bastar Audi. So that's the closest of the battles. And in a sense, it's the easier one to understand, because really it's who comes out ahead.
We just had a quick look at the Toyota, the 66 Toyota of Potti and Monti. That was a car that was parked up at the end of pit lane, if you remember, and did not take the start. We had a car go missing in the 89 of Will Casabon, and we never saw where that car was. What happened was during the release from the slow lane to the fast lane during the install lap, a lot of drivers got confused. There have been lots of warnings because the instruction by the marshal didn't seem to be clear for everybody. So lots of people got confused by it. Casabon ended up hitting the Toyota, and both of them retired before they'd even got onto the track. I suppose he was on the apron, wasn't he? So he was nearly on the track.
Yeah,
But that is the reason why we never saw Will Casabon, because he had made contact with the Toyota and had instantly been pulled back into the paddock. An unusual one.
It is. Fingers crossed that we don't get anything like that today. Number 67 there you can see, which is going to be started by Sacha Botterman. Marc Lopez started yesterday. He'll do the second stint. It's one qualifying session per driver, and then you start the race for which you've qualified. Sacha Botterman, very, very rapid driver indeed. So the grid is now being cleared. It is, I think, complete looking at it. I can't see any gaps there, unlike yesterday. Although one car that we haven't had race is that of Tom Verdier and Loris Cabiru, which missed qualifying because of an engine drama, didn't race either yesterday. So
they've had the crane attached to the engine,
right,
and it's been there for 2 days now. It hasn't actually lifted the engine out of the car or done anything to it. So whether they haven't got another engine for that car, the steering rack was out the last time I looked, but unfortunately not much more work has been done on that car. And it's been a bit of a story like that for AGS events this year with the Aston Martins. They have really struggled to keep those cars in good working order.
Well, this is the man that's going to start on pole position, Alexander Hartwig. The car knocked into a spin early in yesterday's race when Moritz Wiskirchen was at the wheel of it, but Alexander Hartwig is looking pretty confident, and whereas yesterday's race had lots of Porsches up near the front, it's Porsche on pole, yes, but then Ivan Jacoma is in the next of the Caymans that you find on the grid, but that is only 11th, so it's not going to be quite so Porsche-dominated maybe as yesterday's race was. But picking a winner, as ever, in all of this, never mind which class, is just well nigh impossible because it is, again, wide open, isn't it?
Absolutely. And what I really love about the GT4 series is that as soon as we get the second drivers into the cars, the things really flip, because your Pro-Ams with the pros aboard really do a great job of moving up through the field. Then the Ams get in, and in relation to the Silvers, are less strong, so they fall down through the silver category cars, which tend to stay around their similar area. So we saw Jim Pla, for instance, not a very good qualifying, incredible first stint, got himself right up there, and then that 87 car ended up, unfortunately, with contact, but was falling down the field. Of course, Jean-Luc Boblique will start the car this time, and he's down in 39th position.
Yeah, and with all due respect to Jean-Luc Boblique, he's an experienced driver, but he's not the fastest of the AMs in Pro-Ams. And so the danger is that he loses more ground in that first stint that makes Jim Pla's life very difficult indeed. Jim could do with safety cars early so that Jean-Luc doesn't lose too much time. But we will find out exactly what pans out of this final round of the GT4 European Series then. The grid is cleared, engines are fired, and so the cars in a moment will be released then. The pace car, as it is, sits at the front of the grid. The race director, Steve Burns, will give the command when he's happy for that to move away, and then the race cars will follow. There's a 15-second board that's just been shown. So the safety car crew in the leading car ready to move away now, and the cars set off in pursuit with Alexander Hartwig blasting away. The green flag waved, and as the cars go towards turn one, a long pit straight, which is a fantastic part of the track for overtaking, but you've got to be really brave diving down to turn one, and make sure, as you were hearing Greg Gilbert say, that you don't overshoot and miss out that chicane.
need to make sure.
You were explaining yesterday that you need to go behind in order to then rejoin the circuit.
Yeah, exactly. So the bot that you can see the kind of the route that they have to take on that right-hand side there.
So the grid has Alexander Hartwig on pole position, Enzo Julier lining up with him at the front, and then on the second row of the grid, Sacha Bottomin and Simon Thurman. The third row is where you find Robert Consani and Antoine Potty, who is in today's race, ahead in turn of Mike David Ortman and then Kenny Heremans. The fifth row, Laurent Hergon and Kevin Jimenez alongside, ahead of Ivan Jacoma, and then Fabien Michel with his grid drop falling into the body of the field. Will Burns was a star yesterday. He comes next alongside fellow Brit Gus Bowers. Then on the 8th row of the grid, Akil Rabindra and Owen Bastal. The 9th row, Loic Villiger and Marcus Lundstras. And to round out the first 10 rows of the grid, Ruben Del Sart on the inside. Max Kronberg's Porsche, damaged yesterday, will be alongside. Greg Faisal on the 11th row goes solo, but Corentin Surrand has a co-driver in Etienne Shelley. He's on row 11. The 12th row, Alexandra Papadopoulos, has Robert Haub alongside of him. Then it's Andreas Meijel, winner yesterday, but only on the 13th row today, with Alexander Weintraub alongside. The 14th row is Michael Blanchemin and Cyril Salai, ahead of Jakob Noll and Eric Debar. Row 16, Tim Whale in the McLaren, Nico Gomar alongside him. Then it's Paolo Meloni and Arthur Peters. The 18th row, Andrei Solokotsev, has another of the soloists, Pierre-Laurent Figuer alongside him. The 19th row, Christian Gysi and Julien Lambert. They are in turn ahead of Jean-Luc Beaubelique on the 20th row of the grid alongside Jason Tahinci. Then you've got on row 21 Pascal Gibon and Mauro Ricci, sharing with the renowned goalkeeper Fabien Barthez this weekend. Row 22 is Richard Distel and Moritz Gysi, and then the back row, Frédéric Dabrabon and Rodrigue Gillon in the Pro Sport Racing car, the Nico Verdonk Academy entry. That is the grid. As we say, there's the mandatory pit stop as well, between 25 and 35 minutes. The cars now making the run down towards turn 10, getting themselves in the side-by-side formation, ready for the start of the race. And let us see then exactly how calm it's going to be for the first few laps of the race. I suspect calm is not a word that we're going to really have to worry about from GT4 drivers. Their races are always dramatic. There's always an awful lot that goes on, and with a championship on the line, you can expect even more of that as well, can't you, as the cars then now come down towards turn 10. Another climb up the hill the other side of that, and then we will be ready to get things underway. Porsche versus Mercedes-Benz from the front row.
Yesterday we had a very, very slow roll up to the line. It was a very compressed field, and once again the field very, very slow at the top of the hill, which gives the opportunity for those at the tail end with such a massive grid. 46 cars starting this one. We started the weekend with 48, and we're now with 46. Still huge crocodile of machines, still cars at relatively racing speed coming round the turn 10 as our leaders head into the final chicane. You've got to go through your grid hatchings, so watch out for drivers making sure that they are in their grid hatchings line. So Mercedes to the outside and the Porsche on the inside line. That was a little tricky for Fontana to get into. He spent a little bit of time in the middle of the road and then realised where he needed to be.
So, as the pace car peels into the pit lane, it's a little bit untidy. You can see further back, they're not particularly on the grid hatchings, but I think they got themselves there now as the lights change. And Enzo Julier makes a good start from the outside of the front row, but a demon getaway by Sacha Bottomin from the second row, because the Audi has absolutely pierced its way through the front row cars. And so also a good getaway by Robert Consani. The Audi weaving left and right to try to defend the line down towards turn 1. And a good getaway also by the Alpine there. So Simon Thurman is up into second place, but then spins and comes back into the pack, and there's mayhem already. Aston Martin off, bang, contact inevitable. Mercedes hits Alpine. Safety car's going to be called for, isn't it? And that was just a sitting duck in the middle of the road, that Alpine.
And I'm a little worried as to who that Mercedes was. That could well have been the Ricci Mercedes. It was far back in the pack, and we were waiting for that to happen. Safety car has been called. What a Weintraub it is.
Safety car procedure, safety car.
And that is the 88 machine. But we were lucky there wasn't bigger contact. There's more contact. Big hit into the wall for the 22 on the right-hand side as we slow down for safety car. And two other cars on the left-hand side. The Code Racing Alpine and the 27. Is that an Audi?
It is. It's one of the Santalot cars. Greg Faisal, the solo driver. So yesterday's winning car in the wall. Andreas Meijel in number 22 Porsche. And yeah, that again is that trigger when everybody slows for the safety car. The instruction gets through and some get it earlier than others, and the net result is that mayhem breaks out behind.
And Faisal was second in yesterday's AM competition after all the penalties, so that's a real disappointment for him. How many cars have we I don't think we've actually lost that many cars through the first sector, just the Alpine and the Mercedes.
There was another Aston, wasn't there, that went in the gravel. It looked like one of the Racing Spirit of Le Mans cars that was in the gravel and spun across the road. But the bigger incident there was, as you say, the Alpine being collected.
Great start from the Alpine. The front row seemed to just be swallowed up by the cars behind.
Well, it was a good start. Trouble was, all that speed couldn't be maintained through turn one, and around it went. So the safety car is on track, ready to pick up everybody. And this, I have a feeling, might be a lengthy one, because you've got probably about half a dozen cars to remove, haven't we?
Well, yes, it depends on how many actually are stopped to the top of the hill, because as you say, there was an Aston Martin in the gravel, but by the looks of the timing screens, that Aston has got going again.
Well, that car certainly needs moving. So as the cars now come through, Simon Thurman out of the race, and probably a bit winded by that whack as the front was swiped by the
leading AM car with a lot of smoke.
Oh, yeah.
Leading the championship, and I'm not sure that's going to be going anywhere fast, because that doesn't feel as though that's smoke from tyre rubbing or anything.
And it's grinding to a halt, isn't it, coming out of the last corner. It's way behind everybody else, and look at the steam and the smoke, and that's mechanical. So that car of Andrei Solokotsev is going to have to head for the pit lane. You're right, the Aston seems to have got itself out of the gravel, or already been hoiked out of the gravel. So the Alpine there is the one that needs removing. But here it's a different story. So Loic Villiger is the white Alpine in the gravel in the background. Andreas Miles Porsche, that's had more hits than Elvis, that car this year. That needs moving. And 27 Greg Faisal's Audi, plus all the track needs sweeping there from any debris or gravel that's been peppered onto it. That's what's going to take the time, because as yet there isn't a recovery vehicle there. Solokotsev has not yet made it to the pit lane, so that car I think has expired coming out of the chicane on the track. But we haven't seen it emerge from the last corner yet.
He has the car has a 15-point advantage in the championship over Mauro Ricci, and actually Solokotsev only managed to score 12 points yesterday. Here is a replay of the start. Look at the front row, they just don't get away in the same way that the Audi did, and the rest of them behind seem to just have more momentum.
But have a look at the Alpine then. What does Simon Thurman do? Simon Thurman down towards the first corner that then goes against him. Did he just lose it, or did he get a nudge? He turns in, and no, it was all self-induced, that wasn't it? So he spins, others scatter. He comes back across the track, and wait for the impact there, bang, the Mercedes swipes him. The Aston that went off was trying to get out of the way and then went across the front of another car. That sort of pushed that in towards the gravel. There's the retirement of the Mercedes then, so that was Weintraub having hit the Alpine. And then what happened to Mayer then? He came up towards turn 5, comes across the road. There was contact already before he hit the barrier, so I think, again, a bit of rubbing in the pack. He was on one side of the road and got fired across to the other.
Yeah, he looked almost like he was on the inside of turn 5 there, on the grass, and got turned across the whole pack. But you could see how much speed the pack was taking at that point. And then suddenly slowing with the safety car cool.
Now, what has this done to our championship situation? Because Enzo Julier is way, way down, 19th. So from the front row, he's 19th. And we need to have another look at the start to try to work out why he lost all of that time. But what that also means is that the Santalok Audi is ahead on track. So the car that started second, championship leaders, have been well and truly mugged at the start of the race and fallen down into 19th position.
Yes, that's all. I mean, we said that the front row had a bad start, but we didn't realise they had that bad a start. Hartwig is in 3rd position. But as you say, Julie down in 19th position. That is absolutely bizarre. Botterman from 3rd on the grid up to the lead. It was a really good start from Constantini. 2nd position. Hartwig 3rd from the front row, so that kind of makes sense. But we keep looking further and further back for the 15 Mercedes.
I mean, whether it's got a mechanical problem, which is why it didn't pick up at the start.
Yeah.
I was more concerned about who was going past rather than who was going backwards, if you see what I mean.
I think it was only just entering our shot there.
Yeah, 19th place as it came over the line. And again, you come back to this situation of not being able to overtake at the moment and for a good few laps while the safety car is on the circuit like this.
That little Alpine had already had a new front nose from front nose? Nose. From race 1, if you remember, we never got to the bottom of who he'd hit, but he had rather crunched left front corner of the Alpine. So it had a new grey nose attached to it for this race, and unfortunately that's been swiped off as well. There is our championship leaders.
So the car has fallen way, way back. It is still circulating, as you can see, so in that respect it is healthy.
And it doesn't look like it's got any damage.
No. But I just wonder whether, for example, it was a electrical issue or something, that it wouldn't change up through the gears or accelerate away, and that's partly why it was a bad start. But we need to have another look, as I say, at the first lap, really, to try to work out exactly where it lost all the time. So Andreas Miles' car that won yesterday, Vincent Andronico denied the chance to race. That's being moved out of harm's way. But we are going to be another good few laps, I would have thought.
Another look at the car. There's a little bit of, on the right front wheel, what looks to be potentially gravel, and maybe some kind of either chip in the rim or a discoloration where maybe he has made contact with someone or something.
But it looks as though that was because they were still racing rather than people necessarily braking for the safety car and catching out people. But the net result, sadly, is that we've lost another 3 cars from the race. So we lost 2 at the first corner. Now, have we also worked out which was the Aston Martin that was fired off the road? It was Akhil Rabindra, wasn't it, in the Tom Canning shared car. And Jean-Luc Bobelic is way, way down. So let's have another look then at the start of the race. So Enzo Juliet, nearest to us in the Mercedes, slow away. But no, it does sort of pick up pace. So down towards turn 1, how many cars come streaming past on the inside? So he's on the outside line. The Audi gets ahead, the Alpine gets ahead, Porsche and Audi on the inside. But look, there, it's going backwards. There's just no pace, is there, out of the Mercedes? So it's down to about 8th as it comes into the first corner, like it's stuck in 3rd gear or something. You know, it won't get up through the rev range. He has to go off the racetrack to take evasive action anyway.
And he has gone across the gravel at that point as well.
Yeah, so that's a delay.
I wonder whether from the next camera he's then on the outside of turn 3, allowing even more people to come down the inside of him. And that will be where he got that discoloration on the tyre from.
But there's something in the car, wasn't there, that prevented it from accelerating away as it should have done.
And remember, when he rejoins the circuit, he has to make sure he rejoins around that bollard, which is designed to slow you up even further. So it could just have been not a very good start. So look at there'll be a Mercedes somewhere over on the right. There's a lot of cars. Oh, he's even had contact there.
Yeah. And then he gets sort of
there's the
hung out to dry. Yeah.
You lose a lot of time.
Streaming past. Yeah. So that's why it's 19th. So Enzo Juliet way, way back. And Luc Ibanez will not be impressed, but I suppose the one good thing was at least he kept away from the Alpine because the sister car didn't.
So championship rival then is where in comparison? Only a couple of places ahead, actually. Bastar is in 16th position.
And only 1 place ahead in terms of class points.
Which down there is actually not enough. So even though
you're right,
they've lost a lot of track position, they're still in the lead of the championship.
They're 9th and 10th in class, and the difference between 9th and 10th is a point, and the Audi needs to overcome by 3, well, 3 to equal, 4 to actually win it. So yeah, at the moment the Mercedes get out of jail free card, really. It is still clear, but Alain Bastar has the opportunity now to make progress on the restart.
I felt as though there was a little bit of contact from the Mercedes on another of the cars that was off track at that point, going before they got round the bollard. Might have just been a little touch, but you know, those little touches are enough to slightly knock the tracking out of line, and then you've got a car that doesn't handle the way you want it to, and it's hard to drive around. It could have just been a wiggle of coming off the gravel and back onto the tarmac. could have equally been a bit of a kiss. One of the cars was a Toyota ahead of them. But that bollard does what it's supposed to do, because if you cut the track and go round that bollard, look how many positions you lose. Yes, he'd lost 5 or 6 before he got to the corner, but then he lost another 10 off track and having to then go the long way around.
You are right about the bollard. However, you could argue that it is there to stop you gaining an advantage. The Mercedes went off the track to avoid hitting a parked car or stationary car. It wasn't really an advantage. It was self-preservation, and having lost out by being off the road to avoid a spinning car, more was lost. But you're right. I mean, if people are chancing their arm and braking way too late and trying to gain an advantage, then it stops that problem. In Pro-Am right now, not only is Jean-Luc Beaubelique hanging on to his category lead in the championship, but Kenny Heremans and Dante Rapinge have just jumped ahead of Greg Gilvan and Fabien Michel. So the Pro-Am situation is still pretty fluid. And again, because we haven't had a full racing lap effectively yet, we don't really know what the pattern's going to be. You see the Porsche of Solokotsev as well that's being retrieved. Now, AM has become very intriguing now, hasn't it, with that car no longer circulating?
Indeed. Mauro Ricci needs a big haul of points. Needs, what did I say, 15 points to get himself ahead. And I suppose he is now solely the only driver that can take away the championship from the WS Motorsport. Here is the points as we are right now. So Ricci has only got a couple in his hand.
Yeah, Ricci needs to be second in the race, in the class. If he's third, it's a tie on points, and he would lose on a count back on a tie break. But if he's second in the race, Mauro Ricci is the AM champ.
And it's Mauro who is aboard the car for the first stint.
Yeah.
Yes, and he'll hand over, of course, to Fabien Barthez, who you would hope is a safe pair of hands.
Right, he is used to saving things, so he might be saving the day for Mauro Ricci here. And as a goalkeeper, he'll stay away from penalties, won't he? So there, the incident zone is clearing the Alpine out of the gravel. The very, very battered Porsche. You wouldn't want to buy that car at the end of the season, would you? I mean, it doesn't matter how cheap it's offered, you wouldn't want to buy that. That's also being removed.
I wonder if it is the same chassis, because it's been thrown at not tyre barriers. I think that was a concrete wall as well.
Yes. It's hit most things going at most venues, but it has, I mean, like yesterday, it's shown good speed. Even yesterday it was in the gravel and caused a red flag in qualifying, then won the race.
Yeah.
Had contact in that. So they build them strong, don't they, Weissach? So we are 15 minutes into the race, and I don't think we've had a full racing lap yet because of this drama at the start. So the cars are coming down towards turn 10. The race leader, Sacha Botterman, now remember at the start he was jinking left and right. That's all been noted by race control as well. Robert Consigny is second. Alexander Hartwig from pole position is third. Mike David Ortman is fourth. Kenny Heremans fifth, leading Pro-Am. Sixth, Laurent Hergon. Seventh, Antoine Potti. Eighth, Kevin Jimenez, leading the AM class. Eighth.
Wow.
Ninth is Ivan Jacoma, and Will Burns is 10th.
It is quite an upside-down grid, isn't it? There's a bit of fluid down there at turn 1 to be mopped up with some tissue. There's quite a lot of fluid actually coming into pit lane as well from the 37 Porsche. That is being dragged backwards to an access point, which serves also as the rallycross track. Let rallycross come here to town in a few weeks' time. But what expired on the Porsche? Because the smoke was coming almost from behind the driver.
Yeah.
But it was white, really clean white smoke.
I mean, the cars are mid-engined, aren't they? Yeah. So it's something, but equally, we don't expect to see Porsches brake. So was that a legacy of an incident? Has something got lodged somewhere and punctured a hole in a hose? And who knows? Who knows?
I mean, he would have been in a similar part of the circuit to what we saw at turn 4. So once parts getting thrown around by contact, then it's quite easy for that part to then lodge itself somewhere. But the engine itself, well protected by being a mid-engine. You do have of course, you do have the radiators at the front of the car, which can be susceptible to damage. But it seemed to me as though the smoke was coming from kind of behind the cockpit, out of the rear arches and out of the rear of the car, rather than out of anything frontwards.
There's also liquid to soak up, so the car's now coming through turn 3, where liquid from presumably the Mercedes is being soaked up.
Bit of quick dry.
Yeah.
special FIA grade these days.
To dry quickly.
The stuff that is being put on the circuit. I don't think in certain championships you have to use the FIA backed stuff, and then in other championships, I imagine here you wouldn't have to use it. But because of their association with Formula One, they might have it.
Yes, indeed. It's taking Andreas Miles' Porsche a bit of time to be removed, isn't it? Probably because there's not a lot left of the front of it to hook anything onto. But we're not that far away, as you look at Benjamin-Lariche, from the pit window supposedly opening. Now, that's going to have to be put back, I would have thought, if we aren't in a position to actually be able to get racing underway by that point. So cars come through, and we are on lap 6 for what it is worth, but still no nearer to getting the race back underway.
Absolutely massive crowds here today. Remarkable amount of people in the paddock. Really difficult to move around. It's a beautiful day in Barcelona. There's actually a classic car concours going on about 10 minutes down the road. As I drove in this morning, got caught up with loads of classic cars. I've got a little route around where our hotel was, and then back down towards the circuit here and around. And
yeah, Jesus Pozzo, the man behind this event, has always been a big Spanish motorsport enthusiast and promoter. Brought a major Masters Historic Racing Festival to this circuit many years ago, but then has sort of combined modern racing with historics, and has been an active supporter of SRO's activities at this circuit for the last few years. And his promotion, plus the Rossi factor, has certainly, as you say, brought people in good numbers today.
Of course, around the back of our grandstand, as we've had the last couple of years, the local car clubs bringing their modified cars. So you've got a real mix of vehicles around the area today, with the classic cars outside, the souped-up Supras and Clios and Saxos out the back. And then the supercars of various guises in the paddock, from GT4, GT3, the Super Trofeos, and then the mad hypercars from the GT1 Sports Club as well.
But a real shame that the GT4 cars, as yet, still cannot go racing. The number of cars eliminated on that first lap, meaning that it's taking a lot of personnel and lots of recovery vehicles to get them all out of the way. There, in 19th place, remains Enzo Juliet. And again, the car's being waved wide of the marshal down at turn 3.
When we look at the Rabindra Aston Martin, that was one car that was caught up in our 2 accidents that is still circulating. Hasn't visited the pits, but I'm sure he made contact with the barrier down there.
I thought so. I was also surprised it got out of the gravel. The leading car, by the way, that of Sacha Bottomau, is under investigation as well, because remember I said he was jinking left and right on the way down to the first corner. Well, race control have noted it and are now looking at that, and the team manager of that car is going to the stewards immediately, so I don't think they're very impressed with the weaving.
So it's not necessarily the start as in his reaction to the lights, because he obviously had a very... Usually you wouldn't see that kind of advantage gained by one car over another in a rolling start situation. He had a very, very good start.
It might be that, but it might be...
So he is in his grid hatchings and he's far back, but has he accelerated early in comparison to the other 2? Look how... Well, he gets to the line ahead.
He does, so that's arguably a jump. And then on the way down here, this is the other bit of it. So there's that weaving left and right, and left and right. So collectively, there's quite a lot for the stewards to look at there. Yeah, I mean, if the front row cars are slow, it makes his start look even better, and therefore you question whether it's a jump or not. That is Rabindra going off the road into the gravel, and he is able to drive out of that. That's extraordinary. He just about avoided the tyres and dug himself out. And there, look, the Porsche of Laboda and Solokotsev getting, I think, into the back of the Mercedes as it was coming across the road. So,
but also, why are they so far back? They didn't start that far back. Here's the second crash. Porsche is on the inside. It's come all the way across. But then the first time we see Gregor Faisal, he's facing the wrong direction as well. But I wouldn't have said that the 37 Laboda Solokotsev Porsche should have been the last car that we saw in picture there.
Steward's decision, car 67 a 5-second penalty to be served at the pit stop for excessive changing of direction at the start.
That's the voice of the race director, Steve Burns. And the stewards have said a 5-second penalty to be served in the pit stop for the car that's leading, and it was for the weaving after the start of the race, not the start itself. Yeah, so the start was good, but then he's undermined all of that by weaving, effectively, or as it's now known, excessive change of direction.
You are not allowed to overtake until the green flag flies at the start of the race. So we obviously didn't have eyes on the green flag, and therefore he made the pass from the front row, even though it was before the line, and I wouldn't have thought some rules you're not allowed to do that, other rules you can, but either way he was ahead before the line, but he might have been only accelerating after the green flag.
Just to clarify that race control message, it was weaving at the start, not waving.
Pit window will be delayed until after the safety car intervention. Pit window delayed.
And there's confirmation of something else we were predicting was going to have to happen. Pit window opening delayed due to the fact that we still are trying to get the circuit clear. And that's, we were talking yesterday, Ben, about cars being moved out of the way and saying that by towing a car away, it's perhaps quicker than having to lift. Well, it is, but I mean, pulling a car through the gravel like that doesn't do it a lot of good.
No, and when you've got a lot of damage to a car that can't be towed on its four wheels, it's easy, as we saw with many of the vehicles yesterday, they were just parked a little bit off the gravel. So the green flags have gone, and he moves after that. So it's just a fantastic start from Bottomat.
But this is the not so fantastic bit, is he goes one way and then the other, and one way and then the other.
Well, if Simon Thurman was able to do that, then he might have not spun at the first corner, because he clearly didn't have the temperature in his rear tyres. He's pitched the car in, it just hasn't gripped. So Bottomat obviously felt that he needed some more temperature, and that's exactly why he was doing that. He wasn't doing it to defend, because he was ultimately accelerating away from everybody else. He was just trying to get a bit more temperature into the tyre before he turned into turn one, and also understand how much grip he had. Confidence into turn one.
Well, we are 36 minutes to go. We've had virtually half the race now behind the safety car, to the huge frustration of everybody. And this is not the championship showdown we were anticipating. There's not a lot that the race officials can do. You know, there are 6 cars or whatever it was in the end that needed removing, and you can't go racing until they're out of harm's way. But this, I'm afraid, has certainly affected what's going to pan out of this race.
Yeah, the quick grab and go from the pickup trucks have got plentiful around the circuit. That works when the wheels are rolling and it can be quickly extracted. There's at least 2 Porsches up there with heavy contact to the wall that needed to be lifted, I imagine, rather than simply dragged. And so that's where you then need a separate piece of equipment. Perhaps that equipment is not stationed at the right place, so you need to get it to that particular incident zone, and that takes just a little bit more time overall. And of course, they're a bigger vehicle anyway, so they need to find a way to access the circuit, and not all of the access points are able to take a big tractor like that.
Oh, that's right.
I don't think they're far away from getting that car away, though.
In the AM discussion, we were talking about the fact that now Mauro Ricci needs to finish second in order to be the champion. Well, his safety car procedure is being looked at as well. So he has done something that the officials don't like. So, although the pit window is delayed because of this safety car process, so also there is the safety car procedure for car number 61 that has attracted the attention of the race officials. Right, there, the road looks pretty clear, doesn't it? Which has been the main incident zone, so we can't be that far off, he says optimistically, getting things back underway now. So we've done 8 laps, admittedly at this snail's pace. Confirmation that the window doesn't open until the race gets back underway. Otherwise, it would be bedlam in the pit lane because everybody would be in all at the same time, and that wouldn't be terribly safe. So in
the world of Pro-Am, you do have the AM drivers in the cars right now, so they will be looking to try and get their pit stops done as soon as possible to get to maximise the use of your pro driver, the likes of Jean-Luc Beaublic down in 36th position. He'll be able to get out. Unfortunately, wouldn't have had much fun, but he'll be able to get out and hand over to the fast driver to try and get himself a podium. It's a little bit less clear with the all-AM group and the all-silver pairings, because it's not necessary that the faster one started yesterday and the slower one started today. There will always be that differential in the Silver Cup pairings, but it can be mixed up. So we won't see everybody come in as soon as the pit window opens.
Well, let's see how many more laps of safety car we need, because, as I say, the road looked pretty clear last time around. So hopefully this might be the last lap. The flip side of the coin is they've been going at safety car pace for so long. The race director may say we'll give them 2 quicker laps rather than just 1. But as they're long laps, you'd like to think that 1 decent pace safety car lap now with the track being clear would be enough to get warmth into tyres.
And we're not at Imola in April. We're in Barcelona and it's beautifully warm outside. There's a decent temperature coming up from the tarmac in the air. Shouldn't be worrying too much about cool tyres and brakes.
Team manager of Mauro Ricci's Mercedes to the stewards immediately.
Oh no.
So the AM discussion continues. And I fear a penalty might be coming for number 61 now for Mauro Ricci. We'll see.
A reminder that Owen Bastard in the number 14 Audi is in 16th spot, and they are 2 places ahead of Enzo Juli. They are our 2 Silver Cup teams that can still take victory this year. The 15 car with a small advantage in the terms of points, 3 points. Small advantage, we thought, in terms of the circuit at which we're at, with NM Racing based 5 minutes down the road. The French-based Santalok team with advantages when we went to Spa, for instance. Owen Bastard and Roy Mehrhouse, the French GT4 champions for this year. So we're already feeling good success. So many of our teams doing this European series, but also then partnering that with a national championship as well. And for the French championship, the GT4 car is the lead car. There is no GT3 category in the French championship, as we see from quite a few different countries. But unlike Britain, where we have the GT4 and GT3 racing on at the same time. Now, safety car lights are still on. I thought we were going racing.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure why, because the road is clear, unless it is just another lap for warmth into the tyres.
Other thing that you need to do is reposition your safety vehicles before you can go racing, and I imagine quite a few of them have been utilised in that last clear-up.
But you've got so many access roads inside the circuit, you can be doing it that way, surely.
Yeah. Oh, yes, so you don't need to do it on track.
No, no. Right, safety car goes through once more. And
OK, teams, we have a lot of oil that needs dressing at the pit lane entrance. So my decision is that this race will now be suspended. So this race will be suspended. You will continue to follow the safety car. The safety car will bring you into the pit lane. You will queue behind the safety car in the fast lane. The pit window will therefore be open so that you may put your second driver in, and I will advise on the start procedure with the second driver starting behind the safety car from the pit lane.
So that oil is from the Solokotsev Porsche, and the explanation of what is happening and what will happen you've just heard from the race director. So the race is going to be suspended. In other words, the red flag is shown, but it's not stopped, it is suspended. So when the indication is given, it will continue, but this is rather than go round and round and round with the clock ticking down all the time.
And drivers will need to be very careful when they come into pit lane that they don't run across any of that either oil or loose oil soak, because that dust gets onto the tyre. They won't have a huge amount of time to then clear the tyre again before they go back to racing. So we'll have to pick a good route coming into pit lane. As we saw, the Porsche was basically parked on the pit entrance, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And what you don't want is to drive over that oil at racing speed if we were still in a racing situation and your next turn is a very tight right-hand turn with no space for crashing, and there's concrete walls on either side of the pit entry.
Exactly, yeah. So the race director doing the right thing for safety purposes, and so now effectively we're going to have all the driver changes done. It'll be a fresh driver to go into the second part of the race.
How does that work then with the driver that has a 5-second penalty to be served during the pit stop?
Well, this is a guess, but the only way of doing that is to add it onto the race time at the end, which is what sort of happened in a slightly different way, but similar in the British GT event at Alton Park, where that championship has success penalties in the pits. So there was a red flag during the window, driver changes were made, but people couldn't therefore serve the pit stop penalties, and so they were added on at the end. That was protested by one of the teams affected. They won their protest, but a regulation was tightened up, rewritten, which has been then uniform across SRO championships. So I would imagine that on the back of that, it's going to be that number 67, which is the one you're talking about with his 5-second penalty, will have that added on at the end of the race. So into the pit lane they come.
Of course, there's not a huge amount of wiggle room for the timetable either. So race control bringing out this red flag, but ultimately we can't be red flagged for too long, because the main race, the GT3 season finale endurance championship, will need to run at its set time. So the cars will stay in the fast lane and they will go down to, they will line up in this order in the fast lane. They won't go into their pit boxes.
No, it'll just be one train so they can carry on in the same order.
Yeah. Even though I can see down there some of the teams waiting in their pit boxes for their cars, that will not be the way that you change your driver. Your second driver will need to walk down to meet the car in the fast lane, and that is how they will then change things.
And that's being reminded to the teams on the screen, all cars to queue in the fast lane. So now we'll see how many teams have been paying attention, really. But it's slightly quirky, isn't it? The final delay to all of this comes from a different part of the road from where the accidents were all happening, and it's liquid that's spilled. So moving cars, almost not as bad as getting liquid soaked up. And the Porsche has been sitting for many a minute in the paddock, looking a bit forlorn.
And had managed to distribute even more oil in the in Parc Fermé. So a nice leisurely driver change for everybody. And what a shame for those drivers that started this portion of the race. Not much can be done. And I wonder whether we will get the full half an hour's worth of racing, or whether when we do go back to racing, I suppose we're suspended, so we can't really change the amount of time after the suspension, can we?
You can change it in as much as you could
red flag early.
Yeah, resume for a given amount of time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
The other thing it does,
it's quite leisurely in the pit. Sorry to interrupt you, but as you were saying, quite leisurely in the pits. You can imagine it's quite busy in race control at the moment for all the reasons you've been pointing out, timetabling issues and everything else.
So mechanics will get down on their hands and knees and check tyre pressures, but I'm not sure how relevant they will be to be adjusted, because of course the drivers, there is a mechanic for Barcelona Automotive checking tyre pressures, but the tyres haven't been up to temperature. Right. It's not like when they're coming in after half an hour of racing action. That would be a very different tyre pressure to what they are seeing right now. But either way, a little bit of adjustment to be made for the second driver. But of course, the big worry going into this race was, will the tyres, and how would you get your tyres to the full hour's distance because of the temperature that we've got in the circuit and the air temperature as well. Setting the car up specifically to get to the end of the hour, that worry is no more. Those cars that are a bit heavy and on usage will be happy to continue to push hard because there won't need to be the preservation, because ultimately we're only going to be doing about half an hour's worth of racing.
If that. And now the cement dust is being put down, or the speedy dry. There is the man with the blower trying to dry that. There's also a track sweeping unit I can see, but I think that might be parking rather than going over there. So I'm sort of hopeful that we might not be too far off getting things back underway. And the drivers, although some of the teams are getting a bit frustrated about this and saying, why couldn't we have stopped earlier? If you were going to red flag it, then we are looking at about 7 minutes, I think, before the race gets back underway. Most of the drivers taking it all in their stride, aren't they?
Second driver's being bolted in. And in theory, we have as we said, we have got the faster of the two in those Pro-Am category, for instance. So Bobalik handing over to Pla from 36th on the grid, and Jim Pla is going to have a huge amount of fun, if we can go racing fully, carving through as far as he can get up through the field. Now, in that category, we have cars all the way up to 5th position. Kenny Harriman's is 5th. Laura Hergon's 6th. They're the top two in Pro-Am. And so 30 positions for Jim Pla to get himself onto the podium to be found. And I'm sure he could do it, especially with the field being so compressed when we go back to racing. And it'd be quite a spectacular sight. For our leaders, 67 Team Full Motorsport, the teammate to the leading AM car, Christophe Amont and Michel Blanchimont. It's all cars that are basically fluorescent yellow, being attacked by the highlighter pen. They have the 26 machine, which is at the tail of the field, but the 67 at the front of the field. Marc Lopez will take over from Sacha Botterman, the Spaniard. Now look at the 55 Alpine. Laurent Hergon, as you said many times before, works as the development driver for RS, so for Renault Sport, knows the Alpine incredibly well, and serves as a driver coach in the Europa Cup Championship, and effectively was the driver coach for the winner of that championship last year, Jean-Baptiste Mella, who he now shares that 55 car with. And Jean-Baptiste will be getting into that car, which sits in 6th position, so 2nd in Pro-Am. And now we have a little bit more sweeping going on. Will Burns, remember yesterday, absolute star of the second portion of our race, having taken over in the 12 machine from Berke Bessler. Berke will be now jumping aboard that car to do the second stint today. They are in 10th position. That equates to 6th in class. Antoine Potty, 66, didn't get a chance to go out yesterday after being assaulted in pit lane by the 89. Is the 89 out there at all? Yes, it is. 28th spot. And there is the leading AM category car in 8th position overall. Jimenez is doing a fantastic job to have an AM that high up through the field. It's got the Trentino Porsche behind. He's got the Berke Bessler Will Burns BMW behind him as well. And he's got the championship battle, of course. Let's not forget that Owen Bastard will hand over to Roy Meerhouse, and Enzo Juli will hand over to Luc Jimenez for the second portion of this race.
And the restart will be in just over 3 minutes' time. So that's now been confirmed. And there is the car that Roy Meerhouse will leave the pit lane in. So looking ahead, in theory, the race will resume because it's not been stopped, it's been suspended. So the clock will carry on ticking. They will leave the pit lane behind the safety car. And then at the end of either 1 or 2 laps, depending on how the race director is feeling, we should be in business. So the race then continues. Effectively, this is like a safety car, but without driving round and round. So the clock doesn't carry on ticking while this, but as soon as the safety car leaves the pit lane to take them back onto the circuit, then the race continues, and it would be like a normal safety car start. So the 3-minute board is being shown. That is therefore hopefully a suggestion that people need to be on board their cars now.
And I think many of them were bolted in pretty quickly, to be honest. The second driver is always desperate to get into the car, and even if the cars are sitting in pit lane, not imminently moving, they still are getting themselves aboard. That will be the back of Michel Blanchemain, who would have got out of the 69 Full Motorsport Audi.
It's the back of Gus Bowers. And he gives that car over to Konstantin Lachnauer now. So restart behind safety car confirmed. 3-minute board shown. And the information we have from race control says that the restart was 13:13. We're now at 13:11. So the engines should be firing up imminently.
Now, at this point, they probably, well, I don't know, maybe do they need 2 laps to get themselves up to temperature again, or will 1 lap be enough before we can go back to racing? I imagine we'll need 2.
Well, the last thing the race director needs is another first racing lap incident.
Due to cold tyres.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But then, you know, as we've seen, not everybody got it wrong on the first lap. Quite a lot managed to do it safely, didn't they? So the 1-minute board shown, and now, therefore, the teams start to walk away from the cars. Engines are fired up, and the stint that they're going to do is starting at 29.5 minutes. But in terms of racing minutes, it'll be, I would have thought, about 25 at best, really. Nobody being credited with a best lap because they've all been safety car laps thus far. And the safety car then is about 15 seconds away from leaving the pit road. Well, we've had pretty much everything thrown at us in GT4 European Series this year, but not a race suspension up until now. So I think Steve Burns, the race director, has ticked every box now in his what happens to me in my race director's role. He's had to cope with safety cars, he's had to cope with first lap incidents, change of weather, people on the wrong tyres for that weather condition, and now all of this. So please, he says, just behave. So we are back running, the clock is ticking, and so now the race is effectively back underway behind the safety car for as a yet indeterminate number of laps. So everybody venturing back out onto the circuit, and the clock has gone to 15 minutes all of a sudden. So because of, again, what you were talking about, timetabling issues, we sort of jumped forward to 15 minutes on the clock, and there you go. So they've lost about a quarter of an hour of the race, which is roughly what they've lost in the pits, if that makes any sense.
So for our championship challenge, with them being so close to each other on circuit, we still really do have a fight between our Silver Cup drivers. For the other categories, it could be a little bit more tricky. Jimpla, I think, still has the lead in the Pro-Am category, despite the fact he's down in 16th in this particular race right now, and only has 15 minutes to move up through the field.
Yes. Well, and less than that. Just thinking about this as well, there's a commentator in the UK
Safety car in this lap.
Right, safety car in this lap. So we're going to go racing this time. It'll be about 13.5 minutes. There's a commentator in the UK who is constantly banging on in touring cars about the fact that safety cars breed safety cars. And we have a safety car restart, and we're going to have about 13.5 minutes in which to do this. So it could be a bit frantic.
2 points of difference between Luc Jimenez and Roy Meerhouse at the head of the silver drivers. They are in the middle of the pack. They are, well, not in the middle as such, but, you know, there and thereabouts, with Meerhouse in 16th and Jimenez in 19th. It's quite, yeah, it's pretty much the middle.
This is effectively the shortest ever GT4 race, isn't it? Because everything we've had up to now has been irrelevant, because it was the order, which was the order, which was the order before the first lap ended because of the safety car. And it's going to be about 13 minutes and a bit of actual racing by the time they get to the timing line. Please, let's get through. Yeah, everything is crossed up here, and I'm sure it is in race control. Steve Burns, take a deep breath. Here we go then. The final round of GT4 European Series is back underway. Green flag waves, and they fan out across the road down towards turn 1. And so Sacha Bottoman's car, now with Marc Lopez at the wheel, comes under instant attack then to the outside line. There goes Moritz Viskirchen in the blue Porsche. He tries to dive round the outside, and straight away there's a hip and shoulder, there's contact. The Porsche survives it. They wriggle out of turn 2, and Marc Lopez still in the lead.
Sasa was looking very strong in the first of the Aston Martins, though, wasn't he? Looking very, very good. Ultimately, there wasn't enough space for him to move up a position. There is Roy Meerhouse in the number 14 with a bit of space around him. And behind him, a couple of positions will be the Mercedes. Looking to the outside, there is no space for Benjamin Lariche, but he does the switch back. He's going to be on the inside for the last part of the corner and makes it stick already before going into the braking zone. Now Viskirchen trying to go around the outside of Marc Lopez. That might work too.
It's a brave effort, isn't it? The Audi stands its ground, but yet the Porsche has done it. Right round the outside goes Viskirchen. Lopez now comes under attack from Sasa. And there is Alex Fontana, who you can't rule out. Now, Fontana has made good progress because he's now running in, what, 6th place. And he was 9th at the start of the lap, so he also is pushing on, having taken over from Ivan Jacoma. So the race leader is Benjamin Lariche, but he's got a whole stack of cars behind him down towards turn 10 to the right inside line. There goes Hugo Sasa, brakes late, dives up the inside of Marc Lopez. Fontana does the same in the background. Look against the Toyota there. Well, through has gone Sasa for 3rd place, but Fontana not able to make his move.
What about Dante Raponjo now around the outside? That makes works as well. So we've got a real cork in the bottle here that everyone's trying to squabble their way past, knowing that they've only got 11.5 minutes remaining. Any changes further back, we'll find out as they complete their first lap. But it does look as though, for the moment, cross fingers and touch wood, everyone seems to be facing the right direction.
Out of the chicane they come then, this long queue of cars. 40 took the restart, but it is Benjamin Lariche who will lead across the timing line. So he leads at the end of, really, our first proper racing lap. There in 8th in class is Rui Meerhouse. So he goes through in number 14 then, up into 14th place overall. And what of Luc Ibanez?
19th, so has lost a position. 10th now in class.
So as they come up towards turn 3, that keeps the Mercedes the same class position, doesn't it? He's still 10th, whereas up into 8th has got Meerhouse. So Meerhouse is on the ascendancy. It's the Mercedes that for class points is staying where it is.
And Meerhouse has Jamie Day just ahead, so the possibility, and look at that, equal points, but with Jamie Day ahead, the possibility of moving up further, surely.
Now, also, you start to think about tie breaks and the number of wins for each of the combinations as well.
And that's happened in the shot there. There is the 14 car, Jamie Day behind him. So now those points are changing again, and that will be based on the last lap, not on the last sector. Now we've got a new championship leader.
And the frustration for Ibanez, there he is that he's nowhere near his class rivals at the moment. He's got Pro-Am cars around him, so he can't even think about gaining places yet because he hasn't got the pace to get through Pro-Am. So it's advantage Audi. Although it's not sparkling overall, it is in 13th place in the race in its class position, as we've been explaining, but that's how you score points, not overall. The Audi now has the advantage, and not only that, Roy Meerhouse has just done an absolute best in the middle sector. In Pro-Am, Jean-Luc Bobelic and Jim Pla are still ahead of Kenny Heremans and Dante Raponge, and that means they have jumped ahead of Greg Gilbert and Fabien Michel within the Pro-Am part of the race.
But the Corvette is at the lead of that particular category and doing a really good job up into 3rd position overall, following Henrik Sasa up into 3rd. They both got past Viskirchen in the middle part of the lap.
10 minutes to go and counting as the leaders go through. So Benjamin Lariche now 7/10 of a second up on Hugo Sasa there in 2nd place, who's done the fastest lap of the race. No, he's not. Rui Meerhouse now does the fastest lap of the race. So the yellow Audi in the background closing on traffic and drama there as Marc Lopez gets assaulted by Alex Fontana, and around he goes, and others have to scatter in evasive action. So Lopez tries to rejoin, but in doing so puts the car into the gravel because there wasn't enough lock, and if he doesn't get out of that, then we're going to be in yet more strife. Oh, no, he was tapped into it, but then tries to get back into the race, turns the car through and ends up in the gravel, and he's beached it, so that's going to be another yellow flag zone. Anyway, back to the race for the moment while it runs. Lariche leading, but only just from Hugo Sassa. Dante Raponge up into third place now, and he's got himself ahead of Moritz Wiskirchen in the number 44 Porsche, the pole position car. So yellows in the first sector, 8 minutes on the clock.
Still attacking the yellow number 14 Santalog Audi with cars ahead that he can gain points. No, he can't gain points from. Berke Bessler is the next car that he will take points from. He's at the head of that queue.
Full course yellow in 10 seconds.
Full course yellow. Back of the queue, I was about to say.
5.
Not much is going to change now, then, is it?
2, 1. Full course yellow now.
So everybody has to slow and respect the full course yellow. And hopefully this car can be moved as quickly as possible. So in AM at the moment, even though they're not circulating, Mikhail Loboda and Andrei Solokoptsev would still win from Mauro Ricci, and then Julien Lambert and Wilfried Casabon in third. But as far as silver is concerned, Ruimir Hassano and Bastard have now done enough, as Ben was explaining, by jumping up into 7th in class and their rivals still being 10th. Now the points difference is enough to tip them ahead. So over the line they come. Did we get 2 racing laps out of that, or just 1 and a bit? I can't quite recall. But as they come over the line, Marc Lopez, who was struggling a bit for pace anyway, being collected by Alex Fontana, and there's confirmation that now Ruimir Hassano and Bastard are ahead in the Silver Drivers' Championship, and the full course yellow period ensues in this restart.
Fabien Barthez is in the car that he shares with Mauro Ricci, and they are down in 7th in class. Even if we are going back to green flag racing, there's not much of an opportunity for Barthez to improve his position because he's got 5 cars.
Safety car procedure, safety car lights on.
Between himself and the little Alpine of Figueira, which is the next place he can improve points from. Basically, Barthez needs to get right up the front of the field. He needs to get up to 16th, and he's at the moment 35th, so a bit tricky. Now, look at that. The Audi is already on the tarmac. Quick snatch this time. 6 minutes remaining. We're going safety car, but ultimately, did we really need to? Because he can go back going from them. There's only a little bit of damage on the rear end of the car.
We're back to tyre temperatures, though, aren't we? Now, if you look at Luke Ibanez, he's on the back of Konstantin Lachnauer as well as Jamie Day, so he's got a couple of places that might be made up. So although the Audi is ahead at the moment in points, that might change. It now has got a bit stuck, look, because Ruin Meerhouse has got, as we've been talking about, 2 cars out of a different class ahead, whereas now Ibanez is in the situation
safety car in this lap
that he can get onto the back of cars from his category.
Yes.
So he can gain places within class instantly, whereas Meerhouse can't. Safety car's going to be in this time.
There he is. Let's follow him then, because he's got Konstantin Lachnauer just ahead.
Yeah.
And he really wants to get on with it, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Jamie Day in the Aston Martin ahead of him. And those two can offer points. There's only 2 points difference right now in the predicted championship. And there are 2 cars ahead of him.
But Meerhouse needs to get past Hendrik Still's Porsche, Jean-Baptiste Meller's Alpine, and while he's doing that, there is the chance that Berke Bessler, who is his next class rival, will have got away a little bit and stretch the margin. So, the championship in silver still up for grabs as the cars now come up towards turn 12. And the safety car, which I think has got a very good chance of winning the race itself, actually. It's done that many laps, heads towards the pit lane. Whether Jeremy Duval, as the safety car driver, was able to do a driver change, I don't know, but he's done more laps than anybody in this race. And he comes now then down into pit in as the field behind get ready to come charging to the restart of the race, the reduction once more then. And to the timing line they come. So Benjamin Lariche leads the way. We go racing with just over 4 minutes on the clock, and it is Lariche from Sassa, but have a look further back. Here is Luc Ibanez then, who emerges on the back of Konstantin Lachnauer's Aston Martin, but actually can't stay with him. Look, that gap opens up in a straight line, so the Mercedes does not have the grunt there to stay with the comparable shape of the front-engined Aston Martin.
No, he's going backwards. He's got a problem, definitely.
Yeah.
No straight line speed in that Mercedes whatsoever.
Which is just what we saw at the start of the race, isn't it? So look, he's given away chunks of time, and he's being monstered by the Audi of Christoph Amon, but there going out wide was Lachnauer. This brings Ibanez back into the mix. He's a little bit sideways, but yeah, that car, it's like it's got a small engine, isn't it? It's massively hobbled compared to the pace of those around him.
Lachnauer and Jamie Day fighting will help him a huge amount. He's already back onto the tail. He lost, what, 5 or 6 car lengths going into turn 1, but he's back there now, and there's more squabbling going on ahead.
That was Greg Gilbert and Simon Gachet, both in Pro-Am. So that's a fight for position on the road. It's a fight for position in class as well. And ahead of them is Rui Meerhaas, who has still not found a way past Hendrick still. That is Luc Ibanez then, who likewise has not made it up any places. Yellow flag being waved, car in the gravel. 3 minutes are on the clock. We've lost another one down at what's that, turn 7-8 sequence at the bottom of the hill. So there's another yellow flag out and showing.
Big long queue of cars heading down to the third sector of the lap. Lights flashing. 3 cars for the lead though. Benjamin Lariche still leading, and Weisskirchen's gone missing. So was it him in the
Possibly.
gravel?
Yeah, maybe it may well be.
And that was from 4th position.
Cold tyres again, you could argue. So the leaders come then down now to the chicane. And as they do so, Hugo Sasser lining up to try to make a move against Benjamin Lariche for the race lead. There coming through third is Dante Raponge.
And Enzo, Luc Ibanez making a move, I think, on Jamie Day there.
But also, they both moved up in class because Weisskirchen is a silver. So if he's out of the race, they've all moved up one place anyway. There is indeed the Mercedes having gained a place, but it might lose it again because it doesn't have the grunt in a straight line, as we've been saying. Side by side down towards turn 1. On the inside line is Ibanez. On the outside line, look, is the Aston, and a full course yellow is being called for. The Mercedes stays ahead, but goes off the road. Full course yellow is imminent.
2, 1, full course yellow now.
That might be crucial. He has got ahead not only of the Aston Martin, but he's put a car between the two of them. And that might be enough to win this, especially as we've gone full course yellow with only a minute and a half remaining. The cars may not even make it round to the start line to start another lap under this speed. We wait for confirmation. There is Luc Ibanez, who kept ahead going into turn 1 of Konstantin Lachnauer. It was a dive down into the chicane. I saw it with my own eyes, and he really did just throw it down the inside and hoped that he was seen.
The problem is, though, that the higher up the order you go, the more the disparity between the points.
Ooh.
And they've not done enough. It is 1 point advantage, Meerhaas and Bastard, because they at the moment are going to score 10, and it's going to be a 6-point score for Juliet and Ibanez. So I don't think we're going to go racing again because the clock is going to hit 0 on this lap. And I think they're going to miss it out by a point.
But they definitely have an issue with that car.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let's have a look at dramas. This was the move that you were talking about. So down to the chicane. That was inspired, wasn't it? It was proper send.
Fully send, yeah. More confidence in the car. Obviously ran wide on the exit. So had a bad exit through there. Bad through the last turn. And then was monstered. But it's so weird from the restart and from the first start. It doesn't have any drag straight. It's like it's got some kind of blockage to the air intake, and so it's getting asthmatic.
Restart will be on short notice.
So we are going to go restart the race, but it'll be up to the checker flag.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Green flag, green flag.
Right, so we've got 2 corners to go. So for the race, up the inside, into the lead goes the Chevrolet. So Dante Raponge comes through as the race leader. Now this gives others an opportunity to either attack the Mercedes or be attacked. The Audi doesn't look like it's going to make any progress. The Mercedes is on the defensive, and so in the most bizarre GT4 race of all, it's going to be a race win for Dante Raponge and Kenny Heremans. Through that car comes. Then we need to look at the order in class in silver to see where number 14 Audi is. It remains where it was. And what about Luc Ibanez? Did he gain a place at the end? The answer is no, he did not. So it's the championship in silver to Rui Meerhaas and Erwin Bastard. But 2 corners from home, green flag called, and jumping into the lead. Dante Raponge, well, that's his move of the season, and he takes a race win. But what a shame that the race was as it was, and those that have the 5-second time penalties, as we touched on in the race, Ben, are being applied at the end. It's a real shame that with such a good grid and such a competitive championship, we've had so little racing because of assorted incidents.
And they were so good at snatching those cars out the gravel at the end of the race there. It was 1 minute here and 1 minute there. We didn't lose too much time in the last 15. It just took too long initially.
So, full course yellow period to get Viskirchen out of the way.
Ultimately, though, I think for the Silver Cup, the result is correct from this weekend, from the pace that we've seen, the Mercedes versus the Audi. The pace that Owen Bastard and Roy Meerhouse has had in the second half of the season, the momentum has been incredible, and the performance of the Mercedes has been there and thereabouts, but here they've not really had much strength, and therefore they lose the championship by 1 point.
And there is confirmation of the championship. Roy Meerhouse and Owen Bastard by a point defeat Enzo Julien and Luc Ibanez. For Luc Ibanez on home soil as well, that's pretty hard to swallow, and they came so close, didn't they? And then for third, Hugo Sasser and Mike David Ortman. But yeah, well done Santalot, well done Owen Bastard and Roy Meerhouse, but wouldn't it have been nice to have had a proper hour-long duel between those two cars and those two teams for the championship, rather than the odd lap here and there between safety cars?
Other well done is to Dante Raponge for winning overall. It's brought them up into second in class in Pro-Am over Gilbert and Michel. We were talking about the rivalry between the French Beaubelique Plat and Gilbert and Michel, but the Chevrolets come up into second position there.
And Jean-Luc Beaubelique and Jim Plat, there they are, have taken the championship. That didn't look very likely either at the start of the day, given how far back on the grid Jean-Luc Beaubelique was, but they have survived and taken the championship.
And Plat won 10 positions in those last 15 minutes.
And another quirk is that a car that caused the red flag by putting oil everywhere wins the AM championship. Mikhail Laboda and Andrei Solokovtsev take AM, and there is a very happy Kenny Heremans about to embrace Dante Raponge as race winners. But a win is a win is a win, but Kenny Heremans barely did a racing lap. Dante Raponge didn't get many in, but he was on his toes. They were told over the radio, restart will be on short notice, and the message got through to Dante Raponge quicker than it got through to Benjamin Lariche. Simple as that.
Yeah. And the way that the teams communicate with the drivers is definitely something that the teams will be looking at for next season, and way to really refine that, because so often it's either be the cause of an incident because some teams have got the message and other teams haven't. We saw people not responding to full course yellows or responding too late when it's released. And this was the pass then. So we go back to green flag racing. Benjamin Lariche is either in the wrong gear or he's just a little bit slow to be told. And the big Chevy just accelerates past and into the lead.
So an outright win for a Pro-Am car. AMs, by the way, won by Christophe Amon and Michael Blanchemin from Florian Grisot and Kevin Jimenez, and then Max Tressoldi and Paolo Maloney third.
Well, that's impressive, because remember, the 72 car was up in 5th, 6th, 7th position before the restart, and Amon was well down, but had good pace in that short second stint to be able to take the win. And he will keep the win today because he hasn't got any penalties over his head like they did yesterday.
But Mauro Ricci does. He's got a 5-second penalty, and that is a delighted Roy Meerhouse, the Israeli driver, taking the championship. I'm trying to think of other Israelis that have been successful. There was Ido Cohen, wasn't there, in Formula 4? But in terms of winning a championship, an Israeli driver, this might be history in the making. I can't instantly think of another one.
Does race with him an American flag, American license, presumably. Sometimes your nationality is taken by your license, other times it's taken by your passport.
So there are the winners. So Dante Raponge may not have had many racing laps, but that last one was key to success. Owen Bastard, joint champion with Roy Meerhouse. Owen Bastard is with Gemma.
Stay with us. I know you want to get up and celebrate with Roy. Congratulations. That was close, right?
Yeah, what a race. I mean, we were so far at the start. I mean, start 15, they start second. I mean, how is it possible? I mean, when I saw Enzo in the first corner, yeah, when I saw him at the first corner, I was like, okay, we have now one job to do. We just need to be in front of them. And wow, I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah, I can't believe it. I mean, we were so far behind after Misano.
Snip, snip.
Yeah,
snip, snip. We're cutting it all off.
Let's get this helmet off and have a quick word, Roy. I mean, that was really tough. I know the race was very difficult to keep your focus as well and to keep the heat in the tyres. I mean, you had it all against you. Roy, just if we can grab you the second you got your helmet off, sorry.
Yeah,
we saw you get out of the car. That feels good, right?
Oh, man. Yeah, that was amazing. Wow, double champions. I didn't, honestly, not in my wildest dreams did I expect this going into this season. I don't know what to say. Car was mega, team was mega. I want to thank my family for being here, my friends, sponsors, L1, for just giving it his all season.
Congratulations, man. I mean,
Thank
that's
you.
mega. Well done. Go celebrate.
For the Santalok team, Rui Meierhaus and Owen Bastard take the championship at the end of a much interrupted race, but it's a shame that that's a sort of memory of the GT4 European Series season, because it has been so good all year. Great racing, good entries, and as the celebrations are underway for Rui Meierhaus and Owen Bastard, think ahead to next year when a 6-hour GT4 non-championship race is going to be added to the calendar, and that's going to be really good indeed, because the one thing that the drivers crave is track time, and a longer race, of course, always offers up more surprises. So the drivers there behind the podium, and the championship officials congratulating them will step forward shortly. So there you can see, out of the 3 classes, the silvers, the pro-ams and the ams, all getting set for the podium celebrations in a few moments' time. Race result then: Dante Raponge, Kenny Heremans, the winners from Benjamin Lariche and Robert Consani, and then Hugo Sassa and Mike David Ortman taking third. Fourth to Romain Monti and Antoine Potti, ahead of Alex Fontana and Ivan Jacoma, Becky Bessler and Will Burns rounding out the top 6. Pro-Am winning overall, the winning silvers on the track, in other words, not the championship, but in the race, Benjamin Lariche and Robert Consani, and the winning AMs, you have to go a lot further down the order to find Michael Lanchemin and Christophe Amont. So the podium is being made ready, and the circuit officials and the SRO team working briskly to try to get people up there as quickly as possible to crack on. And so the announcements are about to be made to bring out the drivers, and the silver podium is going to be the first one, which will have then for third place the Toyota combination from CMR of Antoine Potti and Romain Monti. Out they step, missing yesterday's race, but being third in class today. Antoine Potti and Romain Monti, who've had, again, a bit of an up-and-down season with the Toyota Supra. Second in silver, oh so close to being able to win the race, but they have been victorious elsewhere this year. Mike Ortman and Hugo Sassa step forward to the podium. And then the class winners, even if they didn't take the race win, Robert Consani and Benjamin Lariche step forward in the Team Speed Car Audi. They are the class winners, the team represented on the podium as well. So second overall, but silver victory. Benjamin Lariche and Robert Consani win in silver here in Barcelona. So for Team Speed Car, I should say, the French team, the French national anthem played, and so now the trophies to be presented. The GT4 European Series, again with bumper grids, and Josep Luis Santamaria, the circuit director for the Barcelona Catalunya venue, shakes hands with the drivers, and trophies presented to the third-placed crew first of all. Then the trophies are made ready for the second-placed crew, for Mike Ortman, for Hugo Sassa, and then for the race winners, the trophies for Robert Consigny and Benjamin Lariche. Oh, so close to a race win, but it never quite came, did it? And that was partly to do with that restart, simple as. So there, race winners' trophies. They still get the maximum points in class, which is consolation, I guess, but there's nothing quite like an outright race win, and that full course yellow being brought in, the green flag shown, as was said by the race director it would be on short notice, did rather go against Robert Consigny and Benjamin Lariche. It was Benjamin behind the wheel right at the end of the race. So, celebrations are underway, and there'll be a lot of disappointed drivers at the end of that, but some very happy ones as well, and many of them are on the Barcelona podium. So the next podium that the drivers will walk forward for is going to be the Pro-Am podium. This is where our outright race winners will be. Let's have a quick look then at the final standings in silver. Roy Miojas and Owen Bastard, the champions, by just a point from Enzo Juliet and Lucky Ibanez, and then Mike Ortman and Hugo Sassa in third. Benjamin Lariche and Robert Consigny with that victory today up to fourth, ahead of Constantin Lachenauer and Gus Bowers, whose season started off well but then unravelled a bit, but they were ahead at the end of the year of Berke Besler and Will Burns. So our Pro-Am teams make their way to the podium, and for third place there are Jean-Baptiste Mella and Laurent Hergon. For second, Ivan Jacoma and Alex Fontana, and for the top step, the winners in Pro-Am are also the outright race winners here in Spain, and they are Dante Raponge and Kenny Heremans, who are all smiles from the V8 Racing Chevrolet Camaro team. They step forward onto the podium, and a great restart was enough from Dante Raponge to secure the victory, and some very happy drivers therefore are on the top of the podium here at Barcelona. So congratulations to Kenny Heremans and Dante Raponge, not only on a win in Pro-Am, but for an outright race win in, again, as we've been saying, a quirky race with so many interruptions. Peter Corran, the racing engineer of Pirelli, offers the trophies to a very happy Jean-Baptiste Mella and Laurent Hergon. Then the trophies for Alex Fontana and to Ivan Jacoma. And then to the winning team, including the outright race winners, Kenny Heremans and Dante Raponge, victorious here in our final round of GT4 European Series. And at the end of a much interrupted race from all of us here in Spain, it's goodbye.